Just as a gentle reminder before we begin the service for Mrs. Dorothy Press, if you have a cell phone with you today, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Immediately following the service this afternoon, the Shiva will be observed in the funeral home in the other room, the other side of the building, from 4 p.m. immediately following the service until 6:30 p.m., where you'll be able to see the family. Officiating at today's service is Cantor Howard Friedland.
Shalom, peace, and welcome to everyone who is here, everyone who is joining us from online. I don't know if you noticed a few minutes ago there was a ray of sunshine that came in. The first I've seen in about 2 weeks, I think, in Chicago. So a ray of light. Before we begin the main service, we begin with the ceremony of Kriya. And Kriya means literally to tear or to rend. It is said that when our ancestor Jacob heard of the supposed news of his son Joseph, who was said to have been his favorite son, he was so overcome with grief that he tore his garment. And so today, when people hear of the news of a death of a loved one, often they'll tear a shirt or a dress or a piece of a jacket. Today we'll be tearing a ribbon, for those of you who are wearing the Kriya ribbon. And it is an outward sign to everyone you come in contact with that there's a tear in your heart. And God willing, in the next days and weeks and months to follow during the weeks of and months of mourning, that tear will heal. We say words in praise of God, and it may seem contrary to want to say words of praise to the Almighty at a time when you've lost someone you've loved so much. But in saying words of praise, we acknowledge that nothing exists without contrasts in this world, and all the good and the light and the love that was Dorothy's life. We must say goodbye to her now. So I ask those of you who are wearing the ribbon to please rise where you are and stand in your place. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, dayan ha'emet. Adonai natan, v'Adonai lakach, Yishem Adonai mivarach. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of all worlds, who is the righteous judge. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. Please be seated. And so we've come together today as family and as community to express our sacred sorrow. We have come together to draw strength from one another and from the ultimate source of all strength. We've come together to affirm comfort and blessing in the face of deepest loss. We've come together to bid farewell to Dorothy Press. We share a common prayer that the source of healing sustain those of you who grieve. May those wounded with loss be blessed with love and compassion. We pray that the journey that lies ahead lead from darkness to light. As it is written, thus says the source of hope, I will respond to your yearning. When you call out to me in the night, I will answer. I will be with you even in the darkest of places. I will give you strength. I will nourish you, and you will know protection beneath the shelter of my wings. I express condolences to the family, to Dorothy's children, to Stephen and Gail Goldberg, Dr. Richard and Beth Goldberg, to her stepchildren, Stephen and Brenda Barnum Press, to Clayton Pascal Press, and to Lauren Press, to her grandchildren, David and Karen Zelby Goldberg, to Jennifer Goldberg, Michael Goldberg, Adam and Ricky Carl Goldberg, to Jonathan Carla Sanchez Goldberg, to Wyatt Press, Warren Press, and Weston Press, to her great-grandchild, Gigi, to her sister, Bobby Feldman, and her husband, the late Ronald, her sibling-in-law, Bobby Wolf, and Hugh Brodke, and indeed to all of you who are here, who are mourning the loss of Dorothy today. Grief knows no bounds of blood when we are mourning and missing someone who we knew well. So all of you who are either related to Dorothy or were friends or acquaintances who knew her, my personal condolences to all of you. We pray for wholeness and compassion in the days to come. And let us say, Amen. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsor, Bihinot dashe yarbitzeni, Al mei menuchot, Yinachaleni, Nafshi yishovev, Yancheni v'maglet tzedek, Yancheni v'maglet tzedek, Leman shemo. Gam kelech begetz al mavet, lo hirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, Hema yinachamuni. Baruch lefanai, Shulchan neged tzorerai, Nishan tov Hashem en roshi, Kosir vayom. Ach tov v'chesed, Yildifuni kol yemei chayai, V'shavti bevet Adonai, Leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsor, Adonai roi lo echsor. Let's read together the translation of the 23rd Psalm found in your pamphlet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 121, Esa'inai el hecharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. My eyes look into the void. From where will my help come? My help comes from my very source, the fashioner of order and harmony. Your guardian will catch you when you slip. Your shelter will protect you while you sleep. Your night will not last forever, for your protector will surely bring back the sun in the morning. Your source will watch over you at all times. And as you came into this world, swaddled in loving embrace, so shall you leave. And finally, this entry by Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back, we pray, to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage. The Torah is the sacred book of the Jewish people. Torah literally means teaching. So hopefully there are things that we can learn from it. It is some parts history, some parts myth, some parts taken from other cultures. It's a compilation of a lot of things put together at different times and different ages. It was not written all at one time, right? For thousands of years. It was an oral tradition for a few thousand years, not even having been written down. No matter what kind of Judaism a Jew practices, we read the words of the Torah as they were handed down intact. We are told neither to add nor to subtract from them, and so we read them in their entirety. And I think the brilliance of Torah is in its characters. There are characters from whom we learn how to live an exemplary life. And there are characters from whom we learn how not to live life at all. And no surprise, they're often found in the same human being, in the same character in the Torah, as we all are. Human beings trying to do the best we can here in our relationships with each other and with the world, and asking the same questions. How did we get here? What's our purpose while we're here? What do we leave behind to those who will succeed us, and where do we go when we leave this place? And some of us are able to answer some of those questions. None of us are able to answer all of those questions. There's still great mysteries in life and in death. But the Torah helps us to understand. And I think everyone's life is a Torah, no matter how great, no matter how small. There is something to be learned from everyone's life. And it would be enough if we came here today to honor Dorothy's most incredible life, I would say. But better that we should honor her life and then leave these doors having learned how to live differently and better in some way because of the way Dorothy lived. And so to give us a glimpse of her life, we have many people who were very close to her. And we'll begin with her son Rick, who will be making remarks on behalf of himself and for his brother Steve. Okay.
Just a little addition to the when the cantor was speaking. My mom's name for her great-grandchildren was Gigi, and the children are Addison and Joey. So I want to add them. So let me start by saying that the remarks I'm going to make today represents both my brother Steve's and my own sentiments about our wonderful mother. Thank you all for coming here today to support me, my family, and to pay tribute to my mother. In advance, I'd like to ask you to bear with me if and when my emotions get the best of me while I'm up here sharing my thoughts with you. It's already started. I want to begin by sharing some very wise guidance I came upon while listening to an NPR public radio story a few years ago. This guidance, I believe, has great value for all of us when we are required to say goodbye to a dying loved one. The advice is both simple and succinct. The advice simply says, the advice is to simply say, coming from one's heart, the following: I love you, thank you, forgive me, I forgive you. I did, in fact, have the opportunity to say this to my mom at the end of her life, and in doing so, gave me, and I believe her, great comfort. Many of you who knew my mother, I'm sure will agree with me that the sentiments and description of my mom outlined in her obituary are accurate and truthful. My mom was truly an amazing woman with an intellect, compassion, elegance, and grace that was surpassed by few. Her physical beauty was quite striking. However, I must add that those who knew my mother well, I'm sure would agree that her inner beauty was just as deep and striking, if not more so, than her beautiful outside appearance. What I think I and many others will remember most about my amazing mother was her unequivocal display of unconditional love, which she bestowed upon her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and other family and friends. One example that illustrates my mom's innate capacity to give unconditional love is her relationship with all of her grandchildren. My mom had a deep, loving, and beautifully genuine relationship with each and every one of her 8 grandchildren. I'd also like to point out that my mom also developed the same kind of deeply meaningful and loving relationships with all of her beautiful daughter-in-laws and granddaughter-in-laws. I know this to be true because whenever anyone would ask my mom how many children and or grandchildren she had, she'd include all the daughter-in-laws in her response. In addition, whenever mom was asked to talk about her children or about her grandchildren, the daughter-in-laws were again included in her response. In an attempt to try and comfort myself, my family, and all of you here today, I'd like to share some information about the last days of my mother's life. My mother died peacefully without prolonged suffering, surrounded by many loving children, grandchildren, and many others. To the very end, she was never alone. She was lucid, communicative, and able to interact meaningful up until the last hours of her life. The day before she passed away, still lucid and alert, she was blessed to be able to spend an entire day surrounded by so many loved ones, and she was able to say goodbye to everyone either in person or via speakerphone. Surrounded by a large entourage of loved ones, she was smiling and even at times visibly laughing. And believe it or not, weak yet still alert, on her deathbed, my mom even managed to crack a few jokes. I'm not going to repeat her jokes right now, but if any of you are interested in hearing her jokes, feel free to ask me after the service. In closing, I'd like to end my words with the following message directly for you, Mom. Mom, I love you. Thank you. Forgive me, and I forgive you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Now we'll hear from Beth.
Take my mask off. Oh, hello, everyone. Oh, it's so beautiful seeing all your wonderful faces, even with masks. But I just want to say briefly that Dorothy, not only did I hit the jackpot with Rick, but I really hit the jackpot with Dorothy as an amazing mother-in-law and friend. And we all know Dorothy's style and grace and wisdom and intellect. She was an amazing, amazing woman, and I will miss her deeply. But I want to just add that one thing about Dorothy is that through the 36 years that I've known her, occasionally Rick and I would have an issue or a situation we really weren't sure how to handle, and we'd inevitably say, well, let's call Mom. And we called Mom, Dorothy, and she always would give us great advice and was a great listener, and she will be missed deeply.
Next, we'll hear from Pascal.
I am Pascal Press. I'm another of the daughter-in-law. I had the pleasure of meeting Dorothy 30 years ago when I was my second date with my husband. He brought me into his cousin's engagement party, and no one knew I was coming. Nobody knew. I mean, that was my second date, so they were very confused. Alan and Dorothy were very confused. Everybody was very confused to know who I was, but I was welcomed with open arms. That was Dorothy. She would welcome people with open arms. She was a wonderful woman, great person to talk to. She was beautiful, strong, opinionated, a great friend. She had many friends and many people she would play tennis with and play cards with, and a great neighbor. She was on the board for many years. She was also on the the CME board, and was a role model for many women and all the women in our family. She was sorry, I didn't prepare the speech in advance, so I'm just kind of raw right now. But there's two pieces of art if you have been lucky to go into their apartment. And their apartment was full of art. ART, I'm sorry, I'm French, so there was a picture of one woman holding a glass and looking at a party, very in control. And I think this picture was very much what Dorothy represented. Lots of pizzazz, lots of beautiful control. And the other one was that big, huge thing that said, "Do you think she has it?" And I think Dorothy had it. She had it to the end. She was beautiful on first day. I mean, being surrounded and being with her, with my other sister-in-laws and our grandkids and my husband and our sons. It was beautiful. It was really, as David put it, a love fest. I mean, we gave her so much love. She gave us still so much more love back. And she made the decision to go, I guess, and she did it beautifully. So, beautiful life, and we should celebrate it every day. And we learn a lot from her, so thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing those moments with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from the grandchildren, starting with David.
All right, hi everybody. So I'm David. I'm Dorothy's oldest grandson, and we were really close. So it's pretty hard, but I'm going to try to get through it too. So Dorothy was a great woman, and she should be honored. For me, she was more than just a grandma. She was one of my best friends. I used to call her, or, she was the first person I would call when I would, want to talk to somebody about something. And so one of the things I wanted to share is that if you have someone who is like that for you, you should call them, tell them how much you love them, because you never know when that person's going to be gone. But even though she's gone, she's, I think, still with me in everything I do. And so we were really close. When I was a kid, I used to call her Dorothy. That's what I would call her. And when she first met my wife Karen, she immediately gave me her approval because Karen brought over a wonderful tray of desserts. And so once I had Dorothy's approval, I knew that I had brought home a keeper. So Dorothy had a very powerful way of bringing people together. She was the most kind and caring person you can find, and she was the most generous person, and especially with her grandkids. I think we all felt that. And I hope to raise a family and take a lot of the values I learned from Dorothy, and so that'll always be a part of me. She was a go-getter. She was a trader at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, probably when it was mostly filled with men, and she would probably out-trade most people there because she was very smart. She was great at tennis, and she played tennis well into her 80s. So hopefully, if I ever make it well into my 80s, I'll be, whether it's tennis or something else active, hopefully I can be similar to Dorothy in that sense. She won tickets to an auction for one of the Bears games. This was back probably, 15 plus years ago. And it was when Michael Vick was still playing football, so we're old now. It's a while ago. And it happened to be a game where it was negative 15 degrees. But she went anyways. She sucked it up. That's who she was. And it's possible that her and Jenny, my cousin, were spending a lot of time in the bathroom by the heaters, but she still made it. So that was great. Shortly after I graduated from college, I moved back to Chicago. I ended up spending about 3 months living in the guest bedroom in Dorothy and Alan's place. And so she was my roommate for a little bit, which was exciting. And the very first thing she did was she's like, "What's your favorite beer?" And so she loaded the whole fridge up with my favorite beer. And then she also purchased the NFL Red Zone channel on her TV so that I could watch football and drink beer. And that was pretty amazing. I was like, maybe you should become my permanent roommate. I don't know. So, and then, even then, so I'm in my, 20s, and maybe I'd go meet my friends either at a bar or for brunch or whatnot. Especially in Chicago in the winter, it's pretty much all we have to do. So she would drive me, and she would insist on driving me, even though I'd be like, I can just take a taxi. I think this was pre-Uber. So, but she would get so much satisfaction out of driving me, and then I would have to explain to my friends. They're like, "Take a taxi." I'm like, "No, my grandma dropped me off." So even if it was snowing. She's very loyal. She always had everyone's back. And she made the best chopped liver, which you might hear about from other people talking. And I know that when I look around our whole family, all of her children, grandchildren, we all have a part of her in us, and we should continue to reflect on the values that Dorothy had and live our lives with those values every day. And so while I'm devastated, I know that she's had tremendous positive impact on me that will stay with me forever. And I know that she did live a great life. She told my Uncle Steve a few days ago, "Don't cry for me. I've lived a great life." And she was very surrounded by love when she went out comfortably. So thank you, Dorothy, for giving me the perspective I have on most things. And it hurts to lose you, but not just because you're my grandma, but like I said, because you're one of my best friends. And, you know, I don't think it's possible to love someone more than I love Dorothy Press. And I want to thank her for making all of us who we are today. And we'll miss you more than you can imagine. And I love you, Grandma.
Thank you, David. Next, we'll hear from Michael.
I just wanted to say that Grandma Dorothy was a role model for me in so many ways, and she was an activist, as some of you might know, and I think that in some ways that's how I took after her. If you notice in the memorial contributions, asked for a contribution to the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, and that just shows you a little bit about how Dorothy was very conscious about society and helping other people and trying to create a just society. And I think that's a value that she imparted to all of us. I just wanted also to echo what some people have already said about in the last few days of her life, all of us got to surround her and be with her when she was in the hospital. And I think one of the things I'll always remember is just that time together when she was in the process of passing, but we were all with her and telling her how much we love her, and she told us how much she loved us, and you could just tell that she was experiencing joy even in those last moments, and that was something that was so beautiful and something that I hope when I eventually go that it could be something like that. And I just want everyone to know that that's how it was for her. She was full of joy, and that's something that I'll always remember. So I just wanted to say I love you, Grandma. I'll miss you, and I know that I'll see you one day. If not I'll see you in the world to come, as we say. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we'll hear from Wyatt.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm a grandson of Dorothy, and similar to what a lot of other people have been saying, Dorothy was an amazing grandmother and much more than a grandmother. She was also a very positive role model for me and my brothers and everyone else around her. It's awfully a huge challenge to be able to describe, the fullness of how caring and great she was as a person. I don't know how she did it, but she brought a lot of joy and support to all of her family, friends, relatives, grandkids, great-grandkids. And I think that individual bond that she formed with each of us, it truly does take someone very special to be able to do that. A few joyful memories I want to share was coming to dinner to get the best mac and cheese and ice cream as a kid. The great chopped liver that was mentioned, the waffle maker after sleepovers, hearing the stories of my aunts, uncles, and dad growing up, which some of them might not want to have been shared, and best of all were the stories of Grandpa Allen. I'd say this week I've been especially touched because even in death, I'd say Dorothy continues to inspire me. Seeing all the people who made calls, sent letters, cards, texts, came in to see her, and the words of support and goodbye and the thank you she got It really does inspire me, and it inspires me to be a better person and hopefully be able to touch, shows how many people she's been able to touch in a meaningful way, and inspires me to hopefully be able to do the same. So I'd just like to say I love you, Grandma, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Wyatt. And finally, we'll hear from Jenny.
To know my grandma was to love her and to admire and respect her. And I want to share just a few of the many things that I loved and respected about her with you all today. The first is that she was fun, and not just because she would order vodka on the rocks every time we went out to dinner. She loved to do so many fun things, like traveling and trying new restaurants and playing tennis and going to art shows and plays and live music. She loved to sit around and laugh with her friends and tell funny stories with her family. She also loved to play games, which brings me to the next thing that I admire about her. My grandma was so smart and a great risk taker, which made her really good at playing games. She was an amazing backgammon player, and she used to play for money in tournaments and leagues. Last week, the day before she was admitted to the hospital, we were playing in her apartment, and she beat me 3 times in a row. Her caregiver, Sandra, was watching us, and afterwards, Sandra asked me, "Were you just letting her win?" And I said, "You should never go easy on Grandma when playing games, because she will absolutely destroy you." And anyone who's ever played bridge with her knows just how true that is. Another huge risk that she took was leaving the suburbs with her 2 young sons in 1970 for an apartment in downtown Chicago with a man who she'd been dating for less than a year, Alan Press. I know she was nervous about taking such a big leap, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions of her life. My grandma was a proud Democrat and active in politics her entire life. At age 84, she went out and protested with me and my friends at the March for Our Lives, which was a rally in downtown Chicago to advocate for gun control legislation. Even this past November, when she was in and out of the hospital and having more and more trouble walking, she had her caregiver, Eugene, take her out to the polls so she could vote in the midterm elections. She also roped Eugene into helping her write literally hundreds of postcards to undecided voters in swing states for this past election. My grandma was also a feminist and a strong woman. For as long as I can remember, she was always volunteering or attending fundraisers for Personal PAC, an organization fighting for women's rights and pro-choice policies. And many years ago, she volunteered as a counselor to women who were seeking abortions and didn't know where to turn. I'm so happy that she lived to see a woman become the Vice President of the United States. She was also, as mentioned before, one of the first women brokers to trade on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in the early 1970s, which was not a female-friendly workplace. And she had to put up with a lot of BS. She did have one big advantage on the floor, though, which was that most people were way too scared to mess with Alan Press's wife. So, the last thing I'll say is that she was always there and always full of love and support. She came to every birthday party, every graduation, every exciting and happy milestone, and she was always so proud of us and ready to cheer us on. And when things got tough, she was even more supportive and non-judgmental, and someone you knew that you could turn to even in your darkest hour. She is one of the most important and inspirational people in my life, And I'm so grateful to have so many amazing memories of her because I can see her so vividly in my mind, and it feels like she'll be there loving me and supporting me for the rest of my life. Everyone in this room was lucky enough to have known her, and so I hope that you all can cherish the memories that you have of her and continue to feel her presence and her love. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you to everyone who spoke. So this is the glimpse I got of Dorothy's life. She was born in Chicago in the North Side, lived on Grace Street. From the ages of 7 and 17, she lived at 6000 block of Francisco, north of Mather High School, although she herself attended high school at Sen. She took a few college classes, but at a very young age of 18, she married her first husband, Joseph Goldberg. They had 2 sons, Stephen and Rick, and lived in Chicago and then moved in 1959 to Highland Park. She was then divorced from Joseph and met, as Jenny had said, the love of her life, Alan Press. And we gathered just, was about 1.5 years ago for Alan's funeral. Alan was the love of her life, and they were partners. Dorothy and Alan were partners really in everything. It's hard to imagine people who were so much in love who spent probably almost every minute together. They were partners in business. They bought a seat, the Mercantile Exchange, and they became traders. I have to say, my own wife was a trader on the OEX, on the options exchange in the early 90s, and there were few women then, but it was because of people like Dorothy that it was even possible, I think, for her to have been there at the time. Dorothy and Alan engaged in so many things. Dorothy was a tennis player, backgammon player, bridge player, collected art. She and Alan collected together and had quite a notable art collection. They went on wonderful trips to Europe. As was mentioned, Dorothy was active in politics, liberal causes, active in women's reproductive rights, Human Rights Watch, and as Michael had said, the ACLU. At age 55, Dorothy retired from trading to be a full-time grandma. She was family-oriented. She wanted all of you, all of her children, around her. Every person felt special in her presence. There were summers spent at Sleepy Hollow in South Haven, Michigan, where the family would gather. Dorothy was an avid reader. She liked fiction most of all. She did crosswords. She did Sudoku. She was great with numbers, as was probably obvious. While not a spiritual person, not a religious Jew, she was Jewish, and made the great classic cuisine of Ashkenazic Judaism: chopped liver, latkes, charosis, and she learned this all from her mother. David, I'm told that you had said to your grandmother, "Because of your chopped liver, I'm not a vegetarian." So it's true. As was said, she now were active in the Art Institute and Museum of Contemporary Art. So what did Dorothy leave to us? I asked the family what her legacy was. And by the way, I'm quite touched by the depth of all your emotion. You have a very large clan. And when people react the same way towards one person, it's not coincidence. That person really was good and warm-hearted and open. There's nothing here today that was a show, that was just sort of matter-of-fact about it. I can tell that she was a wonderful and wonderfully loved person. So Steve said that Dorothy would not let superficial things bother her. If there was an airplane delay, it was no problem. She'd have a book, she'd do whatever, and it would be solved. As Jenny had said, Dorothy said, "The end, don't cry. I've had a very good life." She was inclusive, she was warm, she was open. Rick said she had a capacity to persevere. And even last week, she met with a trainer in order to bolster her strength, and she never gave up. She had so many friends, Jen had said, right to the end. She loved the opera, she loved the theater, she loved music, jazz, classical. She had, as Rick said, unconditional love for people she cared about. She welcomed spouses to the family. She was non-judgmental, helped in whatever way she could, and she helped in many ways. Beth and Gail said it was so easy to talk to her. She let you be who you are. That's key. She let you be who you are. So many times as parents, we want our children to be images of who we are or who we want them to be. So to be inspired and be in the company of someone who will let you be who you are. You know, it's said there's a golden rule to treat others the way you'd like to be treated. But then there's also a platinum rule, which goes, treat others the way they wish to be treated. And it's interesting, David, when you talked about your grandmother having the kind of beer in her fridge that you particularly liked. That's what the platinum rule is, going the extra step. She could have had beer in the refrigerator or wine or whatever, and you can drink that. But no, to go the extra step and give you what you like, to make people feel special, which was, I think, at the heart of Dorothy's life. She loved her daughters-in-law, as was said. She said, I have the best. My daughters-in-law are the best. And she didn't even call them her daughters-in-law, she called them her daughters. Through all of her hospitalizations, Rick had said that Dorothy had stated, I'm not afraid of dying. I just want you guys to be okay. Even at the end, she was concerned about others, how they would feel. She had a most extraordinary life. And it was interesting to me, she and Alan were so successful in business, and that could have been enough for a lot of people, but she cared about other people who didn't have as much. And the rights of other people she didn't even know, but the rights that she knew were theirs to be had, and worked for those. So what do I learn from Dorothy's life? To have, if you can, meaningful work that you like to get up and do every day. To do something for yourself every day that's fun, that's nourishing. To enjoy those things, the arts, music, theater, dance, visual arts. Those things that are deemed in some quarters to be luxuries, they are not. They are necessities. And she was a lover and supporter of those things, to support those things that give us life, that nourish us. And to surround yourself with your family and to be that source of unconditional love and support and non-judgment, who, just like being with you, there's a Seneca, an expression from the Seneca tribe of Native Americans. It's a blessing from parents to children. And it says simply this, thank you for being. That's all it is. Not thank you for doing what you do or for accomplishing this or that. Thank you for being. And it seems to be what your family is about and what Dorothy was about. Forgiveness was mentioned. Rick said that you were able to forgive your mom. She was able to forgive you. And you were able to accept forgiveness from each other. You know, every day we think sometimes it's just Yom Kippur where we ask for forgiveness. There's, in the daily service, there are slichot, words of forgiveness that we ask every day. That every day is a chance to, if we have a long-standing feud with someone, to forgive them and ask them to forgive us. So in Dorothy's memory, in her honor, love someone today. As was said by David, give someone a call. Tell them you love them. And if you're in a dispute, call them and forgive them and ask them to forgive you. And surround yourself with those whom you love, as Dorothy did. She was 89 years old. It's a long life by any measure, but of course when it's someone we love and we miss, it's always too soon. But it was a long and rich life. And you will have her forever for an inspiration. As was said, you know, we say that those who who pass on, live on in the memories of those who are still here. And it's not just lip service, it's true. The way Dorothy looked, maybe a cologne she wore, maybe some garments she wore, the things she did, the wisdom she imparted to you will be with you forever. It is said from the Song of Songs that love is stronger than death, and it's true. She does not diminish because she's not here on earth. And in many ways, her light will shine even stronger. So Dorothy's, I would say, Zichronah Livracha, may her memory be for a blessing. Rest in peace, Dorothy. Rest in peace. I'll now ask you if you are able to please rise for the memorial prayer. Kalmale Rachamim. It will be followed by Kaddish Aton, the mourner's Kaddish, to be found on the back page of your pamphlet. Kalmale Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Hametzeh Menachanechana Tachat Chanfeh Hashchina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הקיע מזהירים, את נשמת Dorothy Press, שהלכה לעולמו. אנא ברחמים הסתיריה, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור ביתר החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, ותנוח בשלום על משכמו, ונאמר Amen. God, filled with compassion, whose loving presence ever surrounds us, bring final rest to the soul of Dorothy Press, who has returned to her source. May the memory of her life shine forth like the brilliance of the skies above as it brightens our own lives, even now. May you, who are the source of all compassion, shelter her beneath the protection of your wings and bind her soul among the living, that she may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. And now we join the mourners in Kaddish Atom, the mourners Kaddish. Prayer and praise of God. It mentions nothing of death, but has words like Chaim, life, and Shalom, peace. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, v'alma divra chirutei ve'emnich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה. וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום, שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל Amen. May the one who makes peace above make peace for us and for all Israel and for all who dwell on earth. And we say, Amen. Please be seated.